Rain tapped gently against the windows of Maple Grove Café as families laughed over breakfast and friends caught up over steaming cups of coffee. Every table was full except one in the corner, where a tired-looking single father named Daniel sat quietly with his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Their clothes were neat but worn, and although Daniel smiled every time Lily spoke, the dark circles beneath his eyes revealed months of sleepless nights. Just 3 years earlier, Daniel had owned a successful construction company, a beautiful home, and a happy family. Then tragedy struck. His wife, Emma, lost her battle with a sudden illness, leaving him to raise Lily alone. Grief overwhelmed him. His business collapsed, bills piled up, and most of the people who once called themselves friends slowly disappeared. Yet every morning, Daniel woke before sunrise, packed Lily's lunch, walked her to school, worked 2 part-time jobs, and still found enough energy to read her bedtime stories. On this particular Saturday, he had saved enough money to take Lily out for pancakes because she had earned top marks in school. It wasn't a luxury meal by most standards, but to Lily, it felt like a celebration worthy of a princess. As they waited for their food, a woman in her early 70s slowly entered the cafe. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, and she wore a simple blue coat that had clearly been mended more than once. She looked around the crowded room before softly asking each occupied table, "May I sit here?" Most people avoided eye contact. Some pretended not to hear. Others politely shook their heads, even though empty chairs surrounded them. She smiled each time she was turned away, refusing to let disappointment show. Finally, she approached Daniel's table. "Can I sit here?" she asked gently. Before Daniel could answer, Lily beamed and scooted her chair closer to her father. "Of course," she said. "You can have my chair if you want." The elderly woman laughed warmly. Daniel smiled and stood to help pull out the empty chair across from them. "Everyone deserves a place to sit," he said. "Please, join us." Those simple words carried more kindness than he realized. The waitress soon returned with their pancakes, but before walking away, Lily whispered, "Dad, can we buy her breakfast too?" Daniel looked at the small amount of cash remaining in his wallet. It was supposed to cover petrol for the week. He hesitated for only a second before nodding. "3 breakfasts, please," he told the waitress. The elderly woman's eyes widened. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly let you do that," she insisted. Daniel smiled. "My daughter says kindness always comes back. We're just testing her theory." The woman chuckled through watery eyes and accepted. As they ate, she listened more than she spoke. Lily excitedly described school, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian, and how her father always braided her hair even though he wasn't very good at it. Daniel laughed in embarrassment while the woman watched them with quiet admiration. An hour passed so quickly that none of them noticed the cafe had grown unusually quiet. Several customers were secretly watching the little family. They saw Daniel cut his last pancake into 2 equal pieces so Lily could have the larger half. They noticed he never complained, never looked bitter, and never asked anyone for sympathy. Instead, he thanked the waitress repeatedly and smiled whenever Lily laughed. Before leaving, the elderly woman reached into her handbag and carefully removed an old photograph. It showed a younger version of herself standing beside a smiling man in military uniform. "My husband always believed character isn't measured by wealth," she said softly. "It's measured by what people do when no one is watching." Daniel respectfully admired the photograph without asking personal questions. Lily gently hugged the woman before she stood to leave. The cafe manager suddenly hurried toward the entrance, looking nervous. Behind him walked 2 sharply dressed men and a woman carrying folders. They approached the elderly woman with visible respect. "Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore," one of them said, "the board meeting is ready whenever you are." Every customer froze. Whispering spread across the room. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't just another customer. She was the founder of one of the country's largest charitable foundations and chairwoman of Whitmore Industries, a family company worth billions. The manager looked embarrassed. Mrs. Whitmore, we didn't realize. She smiled kindly. That's exactly why I came without announcing myself. She turned toward Daniel and Lily before addressing the entire cafe. Every month I visit a different town pretending to be an ordinary customer. I ask one simple question. Can I sit here? It's amazing how much that question reveals about people. She glanced around the room. Today, dozens of empty chairs were unavailable, until this father and his daughter welcomed me without hesitation. Silence filled the cafe. Many guests lowered their eyes in shame. Eleanor then faced Daniel. You shared your table, your breakfast, and your kindness even when you clearly had very little yourself. Daniel looked uncomfortable. It wasn't anything special, he replied quietly. Eleanor smiled. To the world, perhaps not. To me, it was everything. She handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, a check large enough to eliminate every debt he owed, and an offer to become Director of Community Development for the Whitmore Foundation. The position came with an excellent salary, full benefits, flexible hours for raising Lily, and the opportunity to help struggling families across the country. Daniel stared at the pages, convinced there had been some mistake. Eleanor simply shook her head. We can teach business skills, she said. We can train leaders, but we cannot teach the kind of heart your daughter already sees in you. The entire cafe erupted into applause. The waitress wiped tears from her face. The manager apologized for failing to recognize true character. Several customers who had refused Eleanor earlier quietly approached Daniel to congratulate him. But Daniel's first reaction wasn't to celebrate. Instead, he knelt beside Lily, hugged her tightly, and whispered, "Looks like your kindness theory really works." Lily smiled and answered, "I knew it would." Months later, Daniel transformed the foundation's outreach programs. Instead of simply writing checks, he created mentorship projects, job training centers, and emergency support for single parents. Thousands of families found hope because one father understood what it felt like to struggle. Eleanor often introduced Daniel at charity events by saying, "He's the man who proved that the richest seat in any room belongs to the person with the biggest heart." As for Lily, she continued collecting perfect grades and reminding everyone she met that there was always room for one more person at the table. Life rarely announces its biggest opportunities with flashing lights or grand speeches. Sometimes they arrive as a simple question from a stranger. Can I sit here? The people who choose kindness without expecting anything in return often discover that compassion opens doors money never can. Daniel never shared his table hoping for a reward. He did it because it was the right thing to do. In the end, it wasn't wealth that changed his life. It was the kindness he had chosen when no one expected him to.